My name is Olivia Jennings. 3 years ago, I mentored a man I thought would lead this company. Last week, he fired me. No warning, no explanation, just one sentence. We're done here. He thought that was the end, but what he didn't know is that I've been documenting everything for over a year. Every file, every lie, every move he made behind closed doors. This isn't a story about revenge. This is a story about evidence. And what happens when you try to erase the wrong person? They always say betrayal doesn't come with a warning, but sometimes it knocks on your office door wearing a tailored suit and your old playbook in its hands. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary in every way until it wasn't. The knock was soft, almost polite. I didn't even look up right away. Thought it was one of the interns. Instead, Daniel Whitaker walked in, the CEO's son, 29, ambitious, entitled, and as of that morning, my new boss. He didn't sit, didn't shake my hand, didn't even pretend to ease into it. "I'm your new boss," he said, flashing that smirk he must have practiced in front of a mirror. "And we're done here." Just like that. No build-up, no ceremony. Just a corporate bullet wrapped in silk. I blinked. "Excuse me." He gave a slow, calculated smile. The kind that doesn't touch the eyes. "You've been great, Olivia. Really. My dad speaks highly of you, but the company's moving in a new direction, and you're not part of it. No explanation, no transition plan. No thank you for 3 years of mentoring, strategy, late nights, investor wins. Just a power play wrapped in empty compliments." I stood slowly, not out of anger, out of clarity, because I knew. I'd heard the call. 3 months ago, a late-night conversation Daniel took outside the glass conference room. He didn't know I was still inside, cleaning up after a client dinner. "Once I'm in, I want her out," he said. "She's the only one who could connect the dots, and she's too damn good at it." I'd pushed the memory aside back then, told myself I was imagining it. That loyalty to his father, to James Whitaker, mattered. I was wrong. When Daniel walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him, I sat back down. Not in shock, in focus. I picked up my phone, opened a message thread labeled only with a single letter, E. I typed one sentence. "It's done. Folder drops in 3 weeks." The reply came within minutes. "Understood. Countdown begins." That day blurred. I signed the severance papers, the kind that include non-disparagement clauses and promises of silence. I smiled, nodded, shook hands. Let them think I was retreating. What they didn't know was that Daniel's private folder, the one buried in the internal sandbox behind layers of fake subfolders, it wasn't private, not to me. Inside it were call logs, unauthorized budget approvals, board emails slamming his father, and documents for something called Project Allura, a shell company acquisition with hidden transactions and offshore payments. I hadn't touched a single file, just mirrored it, copied, time-stamped, archived. For moments like this, that night I poured a glass of wine, opened the mirrored folder. 3 years of mentorship, 3 years of watching him parrot my strategies and call them his own. And now, he thought he could erase me. But here's the thing about bridges, Daniel. You don't burn the one that's holding your entire reputation. Next time, he fired me at 9:00 a.m. By 6:00 a.m. The next day, I had a 40-page briefing titled Black Folder Protocol. Because revenge isn't loud, it's methodical. By sunrise, I was already at the kitchen table. No sleep, but wide awake. The kind of awake that comes when your body knows, this is it. The coffee steamed beside me, laptop open, folder ready. I'd named it a year ago. The Black Folder Protocol, not out of paranoia, out of pattern recognition. I'd seen it too many times. Loyal people, brilliant minds, walked out with nothing but silence. They didn't lose because they were wrong. They lost because they couldn't prove they were right. So I learned early, document everything, every meeting, every version of a pitch that got mysteriously reused, every off-record decision that didn't smell right. I wasn't out for blood, I was out for balance. And that morning, Daniel had tipped the scale. I opened his hidden server folder, the one he thought no one knew about, started sorting, board emails, investor pitch rewrites, strategy drafts, mine, recycled in his words. And then there it was, Project Allura. On the surface, just a minor acquisition. But buried underneath, fabricated numbers, shell accounts, falsified signatures, one of them mine. I hadn't signed that document. And I sure as hell hadn't approved the valuation jump. It was gutsy, sloppy, illegal. By 9 a.m., I had what I needed: a clean, chronological report, screenshots, email threads, metadata, everything that told a story he didn't want heard. But I didn't send it yet, because timing is power. At noon, I made a call to someone I hadn't worked with in years, Eleanor Marks, corporate attorney. Smart, surgical, one of the only people who once fought a whistleblower case from the other side and won. She'd said something back then I never forgot. Exposing truth is one thing. Doing it with precision, that's power. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia, I'm activating the folder. A pause. Then a breath. Short, sharp, measured. You sure? Daniel made it easy. Send it all encrypted. I'll review. That afternoon, while Daniel played CEO on a Zoom call about efficiency and vision, I was sitting in Eleanor's private office downtown. No chaos, just law. Her associate reviewed the documentation with the calm of a surgeon. This wire transfer here, she said, pointing at the screen. If the board never approved it, they didn't, I replied. I was VP of strategy. I would have known. She looked up. Then this isn't just internal politics, it's cover-up. Fraud? I nodded once. This isn't revenge. It's about the people who still believe in the company. It's about James, the teams, the mission we built before it became a trophy for Daniel's ego. Eleanor leaned back. You've done this brilliantly, Olivia. Quiet, legal, bulletproof. I stared at the folder. I didn't want to burn the place down, I said. But if it's already on fire, I'm not going down with it. By Friday morning, Eleanor had sent a summary dossier to the lead board director. Subject line, urgent, governance and fiduciary risk, immediate review required. That evening, my phone rang. Teresa Connolly, chair of the audit committee. We'd only ever exchanged polite nods in the hallway, but now her voice was different, sharpened. Olivia, she said, thank you for bringing this to us. We'll need a closed session Monday. Please make yourself available. Of course. And Olivia. Yes? This is bigger than we thought. I stood by my window that night. City lights blinking back at me. Quiet. Still. Watching. 3 years of mentorship. 3 years of trust. 3 years of giving him the benefit of the doubt. He thought I was soft. That because I never raised my voice, I didn't have strength. But he forgot. You don't have to be loud to be dangerous. You just have to be right. And ready. Next time, Monday morning. A closed-door boardroom. 12 members. One truth. And Daniel still thought the meeting was about planning the next quarter. Monday came in gray. Heavy sky. Air like it was holding its breath. I dressed with care. Not to impress. But to remember. Navy suit. Subtle pinstripes. The watch James had given me 4 years ago after the Redwood merger. You kept it alive when it should have died, he'd said. That's what real leadership looks like. I hadn't worn it since. Today felt right. At 8:45 a.m. I stepped into the executive boardroom at Whitaker and Brandt. I knew this room, but I'd never stood at the center of it like this. No assistants, no coffee trays, just 12 board members, legal counsel, and a forensic auditor sitting quietly, waiting. Daniel wasn't there yet. Teresa Connolly nodded as I approached. Thank you for coming, Olivia. We've reviewed your dossier. It checks out. Now we need the full picture, I nodded. I brought everything. A tech wheeled in a secure laptop. I logged in, loaded the private drive. Slide 1, W&B Internal Compliance Report. Project Allura and Executive Risk Exposure. But I didn't start with spreadsheets. I started with time. A simple timeline. The day I started mentoring Daniel, the day James went on medical leave, the day Daniel took over, the day I was fired, I didn't say a word. The date said enough. Then, slowly, I walked them through it all. The off-book payments, the falsified forecasts, the emails to board members sent from private servers, the wire transfer through the Caymans, Disguised, buried, but traceable. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't point fingers. I just told the story, one fact at a time, each slide sharper than the last. By the time I got to the signature forgery, the room had gone silent. Real silent. Eleanor, seated beside me, broke it first. This transaction alone could qualify as a breach of fiduciary duty, possibly criminal misrepresentation. The auditor nodded, grim. Fraud. Across the table, someone let out a slow breath. Good Lord. Then Teresa leaned forward. Was James aware of any of this? I answered before the question finished. No, he trusted his son. He believed the company was in safe hands while he recovered. And you? She asked. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I met her eyes. Because I thought I could fix it quietly. Because I believed Daniel might grow into the role. Because instinct isn't enough. I needed proof. And now I have it. And what do you want now? Nothing, I said. I'm not asking for a position. Or revenge. I've already left. But James's company, the one we built, deserves better than what's been done in his name. At exactly 10:07 a.m., the door opened. Daniel walked in. Confident. That swagger of someone who still thought this was about quarterly goals. Then he saw me. He stopped. What is she doing here? Teresa didn't blink. Please sit down, Daniel. He obeyed. Barely. A board member began. We've been reviewing documentation tied to Project Allura and certain actions taken during your leadership. Daniel turned sharply toward me. This is ridiculous, he snapped. She's just bitter. You fire someone and suddenly they're... I didn't come here to accuse you, I said quietly. I came with evidence. He started to speak again, but I didn't let him. These are your files, pulled from your sandbox directory, with your login, your timestamps, your drafts, he sputtered. I didn't authorize. Then who did? Eleanor asked, calm but direct. Daniel faltered, looked around the room, confidence draining from his face like color from a photo. Look, he said, shifting in his seat. Maybe a few things got misinterpreted. But Olivia, she's always been against me. I shook my head. You said I was done here, so I left. But I didn't twist anything. I just showed them the truth. Teresa stood slowly. Daniel, we'll be entering executive session now. Please wait outside. He hesitated. That wasn't a request, she added. The door closed behind him. The silence that followed was louder than anything he could have said. Then came the vote. Unanimous. Daniel would be placed on immediate administrative leave pending full investigation. Legal would contact James directly. The board would prepare internal and external responses. As I stood to leave, Teresa offered her hand. You may have just saved this company. I shook it once. I just told the truth. In the hallway, I passed Daniel, sitting stiffly on a bench. He didn't look up. His jaw hadn't dropped yet. But it would. Next time. The silence broke. And by Tuesday morning, so did Daniel's story. The first headline read, Emergency Audit Sparks Leadership Crisis at Whitaker and Brandt Technologies. And that was only the beginning. By Tuesday morning, the silence was over. It started with a headline, short, measured, surgical, Emergency Audit Sparks Leadership Crisis at Whitaker and Brandt Technologies. No names, no details. But the right people knew exactly what it meant. By noon, 2 more outlets picked it up. By 3, my phone buzzed. James Whitaker. I hadn't heard his voice in months. I stepped out of the cafe where I'd been reviewing onboarding docs for a new client. Olivia, he said. Just my name. But something in his voice, low, tired, told me he knew. I just heard, he said. I didn't want it to happen like this. I know, I replied. I should have seen it, he murmured. The signs were there. You tried to help him. I did. There was a long pause, then just one word. Thank you. And that word, it wasn't just gratitude. It was something more fragile, more human. Acknowledgement of the years, of the silence, of the cost. By Wednesday, the board made it official. Daniel Whitaker was under investigation for a pattern of financial inconsistencies and governance violations. James was coming back, temporarily, to stabilize the company during the audit. The market didn't wait. W&B's stock dropped 14% overnight. A company known for slow, stable growth now looked unstable and exposed. I watched it all unfold from my apartment. Quietly. Reporters called. Former colleagues messaged. I didn't respond, except for one. A message from Kristen Liu, director of engineering. One of the few who'd always treated me like more than a title. They're cleaning house. Everyone's shaken, but we're grateful. You did what nobody else could. You stood up. P.S. You should have been CEO. That Thursday, my consulting phone rang. Block number. I almost let it go. Olivia Jennings? A voice asked. Yes. This is Amanda Griggs, Bain and March Executive Search. We represent several firms in tech and fintech. Your name's come up in quite a few conversations this week. I blinked. I'm not really looking right now. Of course, she said. But the interest is real. Several board chairs described your leadership as… She paused, then read it. Quiet strength with a scalpel. I wasn't sure I liked the metaphor, but I understood it. That evening, an email arrived. From Teresa. Subject: RI Interim Strategy Council Olivia. The board has asked me to formally request your involvement in the Recovery Task Force, a small, trusted group to advise James during this next phase. You'd have full autonomy, authority to restructure leadership and rebuild internal systems. Let me know if you're open to a conversation. I stared at the screen. It wasn't a job offer. It was something heavier, messier, real. A chance to help rebuild something I once believed in, or let it fall into someone else's hands again. I replied with 2 words. Let's talk. The next morning, James called again. I know I can't undo what Daniel did, he said quietly, but I'd like you to be part of what comes next. You still trust me? I asked. Always did, he said. I just didn't realize how much I needed to. That afternoon, I returned to the building I thought I'd never walk into again. Not as an employee, not as someone cleaning up someone else's mess. I walked in as a strategist, a counselor, a quiet storm. As I passed reception, a few employees looked up. Some smiled. One mouthed, "Thank you." I didn't smile back, not out of coldness, out of respect. I wasn't here for applause. I was here to fix what could still be saved. The first strategy session was small. James sat at the head, but every eye turned to me when I spoke. I laid out a roadmap. Stronger compliance, a restructured hiring process, a rotating mentorship program for women in tech leadership. I ended with one line. Let's make sure no one ever gets shut out of the room they helped build. James nodded slowly. Exactly what we need. But I could feel it in the air, the real fracture. It wasn't in the numbers. It was in trust. It had leaked into every hallway, every meeting, every just following up email. People had stopped trusting leadership, stopped trusting each other, and rebuilding that would take more than policy. It would take proof, not of what we say, but of how we listen. Next time, I didn't come back to lead. I came back to repair. But not everyone was ready for that. Some still believed in the old ways. And the resistance was quiet, but real. When I walked into the first all-department strategy roundtable, I could feel it right away. Not fear, not anger, something subtler, caution. Like everyone was speaking half a sentence at a time, waiting to see who else would echo it. The betrayal hadn't just shaken trust in Daniel. It had cracked the floor under everyone else, too. James opened the meeting with a few quiet remarks, then looked at me. I stood, both hands on the table. Let's talk about what's next, I said. Not just policy or numbers, but how we rebuild something that works for everyone. There was a pause. Not empty, just deep. Kristen was the first to speak. I'll start. We've lost good people. My senior architect quit last week. Said he couldn't work in a place that hides what's broken. He's not alone, said someone from HR. 13 formal resignations since the audit broke. Exactly, I said. That's why this isn't a PR fix. It's cultural reconstruction. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with every department head, not to lecture, to listen. Some people came with notes. Others came with silence. But once they started talking, the honesty came fast. Stop promoting the loudest voice in the room. Build a real feedback loop, not one that dies in a black hole. Say thank you before someone walks out the door. Simple, true, it lit a fire in me. James changed too. He started walking the floors again, owning his silence, admitting what had been missed, and asking for help, not orders. Help, people responded, not to his title, but to his transparency. And slowly, it shifted. Not trust, not yet, but belief that trust might be possible again. Daniel's absence was a shadow in every hallway. The investigation dragged on. Rumors swirled. Charges, lawsuits. Whispers curled through Slack messages and side eyes. Still, we moved forward. Week 3, we launched the first real initiative, Transparent Recognition, a platform for logging contributions, publicly, verifiably. It wasn't flashy, but it told people, we see you now. We followed it with an innovation council, made up not just of VPs, but engineers, project leads, interns. You wanted to help shape the future? Now you had a seat. Some didn't like the change. A few old guard department heads began to push back. Subtle things, forgetting to invite junior council members, dragging their feet on rollout. So I called a meeting. No agenda. Just one sentence in the invite. Let's talk about who we want to be. I stood at the front. No slides, no charts. Just words. W&B isn't in crisis because of a bad quarter, I said. We're here because we failed to protect the people behind the product. Leadership isn't just about vision. It's guardianship of ideas, of integrity, of each other. The room went still. From now on, we rise together. Or we don't rise at all. By the end of the week, resistance quieted, not because anyone got fired, but because they saw the direction of the wind. It was moving toward fairness, toward something real, and they had a choice: cling to the old power, or build the new foundation. 3 weeks after the boardroom session, my phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. One line, the board just voted, Daniel is out. Announcement drops at 10. I stared at the screen. Let it sink in, Daniel Whitaker, once the heir, once my mentee, now officially gone. The internal report confirmed it all. Fraudulent authorizations, misrepresented financials, breach of fiduciary duty. The SEC opened a preliminary inquiry the same week. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt closure. At 10:04 a.m., the company released its statement. After a comprehensive review of executive conduct, the board has unanimously voted to terminate Daniel Whitaker's employment, effective immediately. We thank Olivia Jennings for her vital contributions to the ongoing transformation of W&B, his name, and mine, side by side. But this time, the credit was finally in the right place. That afternoon, I sat with James. Just the two of us. No handlers, no PR team, just people. You were right, he said, eyes on the skyline. I shouldn't have handed it over before he was ready. I didn't reply. He wasn't asking for comfort. He was mourning something only a father can mourn. The version of his son he thought existed. Do you think he meant to destroy it? James asked softly. No, I said. I think he wanted power more than he wanted purpose. And that's always where the end begins. At the next board meeting, they offered me a seat, not honorary, a real one, a vote, a voice. I paused. I didn't come back to join the board, I said. I came back to finish the job. Then what's next? Teresa asked. I smiled. I'm starting something new. 2 months later, I launched the Athena Group, a leadership advisory firm focused on ethics-first innovation crisis recovery mentorship for women in tech, no spin, no damage control, just truth, and the work. And we were busy. Because after Daniel, a lot of companies realized they didn't want a Daniel of their own. Meanwhile, Whitaker and Brandt stabilized. The Innovation Council became permanent. Employee surveys showed trust up 48%. People stopped whispering in hallways. They started believing again. Not in me, in what's possible. I hadn't seen Daniel since the boardroom, but I did get one message. An email. No greeting. No sign-off. You could have handled it differently. I sat with that for a while, then typed 2 words. So could you. Then I hit delete. He didn't deserve the last word. Spring came. I was invited to give the keynote at the Women in Executive Leadership Summit. My talk was called The Power of Documentation and the Strength of Quiet Voices. I stood at the podium. Kristen was in the front row, nodding. A full circle moment. They say betrayal changes you, I began, and that it's true. But integrity shapes you. What you do when no one's watching, that's who you really are. And when you're pushed aside, dismissed, or erased, that's when you choose who you'll become next. The applause was long, warm, real. 1 year to the day after Daniel walked into my office and said, "We're done here." I stood in the corner suite of the Athena group. Sunlight spilled across a whiteboard full of ideas. My team buzzed around me, smart, sharp, focused. I raised a mug gifted by my assistant. Gold letters across the front, legacy ego. I smiled, not at revenge, at rebuild. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is building something better than they ever could and never needing their name to do it. The lesson from Olivia Jennings' story: don't mistake silence for weakness. Olivia didn't shout. She didn't slam doors. She didn't post a bitter thread online. She didn't fight fire with fire. She just remembered. She documented. She waited. And when the time was right, she opened a folder and changed the future of an entire company. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was about clarity. About standing still while the world spins around you and choosing not to fall with it. About having the power to burn it all down and instead building something better. The lesson here isn't how to destroy someone. It's how to protect your truth even when no one's listening, even when you've been erased, even when you're the only one still holding the receipts. They thought she was just a legacy, just a stepping stone, just a woman in the way. But when the dust settled, she wasn't just standing, she was leading. Olivia's story teaches us this: it's not always the loudest voice that wins. It's the one that's most prepared when the silence finally breaks. So document everything. Stay true to your values. Let the facts speak louder than your anger. Because sometimes, the quietest voice in the room is the one that ends up rewriting the story.